I am so happy we are back for the second part of our three-part series. We are talking about acceleration through your seven-figure journey. Now, in the first session, we got amazing feedback, and I want to say thank you for that feedback, and also remind you, as we are recording live, we do have a chat component. So please feel free to connect with other people in the chat, ask your questions in chat, as it'll best prepare us and myself for Q&A at the end. So one of the things that I really wanted to dive into was giving you an overview of what the sessions are about. Session 1 was going to be talking about time management and allocation from a macro level. Session 2, we're actually going to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, I know that this work feels very intellectual, because we can intellectualize the work that we do as CEOs, but when it actually gets into the practicality, that's where we see a lot of disconnect. So I'm going to walk you through my process. Now, I'm going to be very open with my journey and use a lot of personal examples here. And so I want you to know that I am teaching this not because I think I am doing it right or have it right. I'm teaching this because I did a lot of things wrong, and then I did a lot of research for me to figure out how to get better at what it is I need and want to do. So on that note, we're going to talk about how to streamline your processes and scale to 8 figures. So in our last class, we talked about time at the macro level. We honed in creating and clarifying expectations and processes for your entire business so that you can go back and gain time. Now, what we're going to focus on in today's conversation is your individual processes as a CEO, and why streamlining the processes is the ticket to scale to 8 figures. And I just have to tell you, the more I was able to streamline my processes as a CEO, I started having capacity to do more. One of the things I get asked the most is, do you do it all? Are you the person? And my answer is yes, for now. But I wouldn't have this capacity to do as much as I'm doing without the streamlined systems. And we're also going to talk about how to actually streamline the systems. I want to get from a place of, okay, I get it in theory, and then we're actually going to break down the application. So as the CEO of a 7-figure business, your job is to cast a vision for your team. That is your job. That is one thing we need to be focused on, because you're a leader, not a manager. As you are scaling through 6 figures, you realize that you're managing a lot of things. And it isn't until you take yourself out of manager and into being a leader that you find ways to actually continue to grow. Now, the more your business grows, the more you will be called on to lead. Why? You're attracting higher caliber talent. When you're doing $8 and $9 million, there is a very good chance that you already have division directors or presidents in these divisions who are really pushing the ball down the field, but they're A players and they're looking to you. They're not looking to you to say, hey, coach, tell me how I'm doing, or tell me what I should do next. No, these people are saying, okay, when it comes to operations, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to our finances, when it comes to legal considerations, we're all systems go. They are self-starters, but they're looking to you to say, I am a great leader and I only follow an even better one. So as your business grows and you scale, you're going to have to lead in new ways. Now, as a leader, you need to divide your time into 3 separate categories. Now, I don't want to say that I am the professional. I've done a lot of research. I just read a lot. Now, a lot of the conversation radically changed for me when I read a book by Dr. Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And that book is 10x is easier than 2x. If you listen to my podcast, you will hear me talk about this book and the transformative effect it had on my life and business. I also had a podcast conversation with Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and it's talking about achieving impossible goals based on data and research. If you haven't checked it out, please be sure to do that. But in the book, 10x is easier than 2x. There are 3 categories that we will use to 10x our business. Now, in the context of the conversation we're having today, I want to be very clear. I used to look at my business asking myself, how do I 2x the business? How do I double my business next year? And that is a really impressive question to ask, except for the fact that when you ask yourself, how do I double my business? Our knee-jerk reaction, our reptilian brain says the path of least resistance is the quickest path. And so what we have a tendency to do is to do more of the same thing to get to 2x. But when I started asking questions like, well, how do we 10x? Well, the way that Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan broke it down, this is their framework. I've started to applying it in, whoa. Category number 1, free days. A free day is an active recovery day, a day where you fully disconnect from work, reading, from work to traveling, reading, exploring, working out. A free day is literally when you say, I am not going to be engaging in work. I am not going to be engaging with anything that is related to the task that I normally do when I am called as a leader to lead or think of new ideas. A free day, it doesn't matter what you do as long as it doesn't involve work. But the goal is to allow your mind to disconnect and wander. And this, I'm telling you, I was reading this and I was like, I think this book just got a little bit too woo-woo. Like my mind needs to wander as a 7-figure entrepreneur. No, I'm very directional. I get things done. But it's in the wandering that it opens up new pathways for us to think of new ideas. Now, a study showed that only 16% of people reported getting creative insight while at work. So over 80% of us will not get inspired by doing the work that we're doing now. If we want to rethink a system, if we want to rethink how we scale, if we want to rethink how we 10x, there's an 84% chance it's not going to happen at work. So how do we create the space to think of new ways and ideas? Creativity and innovation are about making unique and sometimes distant connections. This involves new and interesting inputs as well as the indirect reflection and the fermentation process that can only happen when you have space and time. Fermentation. We're making mental kombucha, y'all. Like our job is to ferment on ideas and continue to look at the same information in different ways. In fact, last night at dinner, I have had 3 really transformational, scary, big WTF conversations this week. And I'm flying at 1,000 miles a minute. And last night at dinner, JD looks at me and says, hey, have you taken time to reflect on are all of these conversations connected? I was like kind of, sort of, maybe if I chose to connect them, I could. And JD says, okay, so when are you actually going to ask yourself if you want to connect the ideas from what all these 3 different people are saying? I was like, I'm going to get to it. And then JD had said, is there any chance that maybe on Friday or Saturday, you could take time to just be alone and try to connect the dots? He's like, because it's just crazy that these 3 conversations happened within 3 days of each other. He's like, it might mean something. And I agree. And last night at dinner, you guys, 30 seconds, I was like, well, if I wanted to connect that dot and that dot, this is what would happen. And JD's like, exactly that. That's what we need to start thinking about. And what we need to do is carve space out for that. Category number 2, focus days. Now, this is us doing the work. And I'm going to tell you that you will find yourself with a lot more focus days when you're making that 1 to 2 million. As you work your way up to around $9-10 million, your focus days become less. And your thinking days, and your free days become more. And I know that it doesn't make sense, but as you get to 10 million to 20 million, you're going to need a lot more free days. Your focus days right now are what you're doing to move the needle in your business. Now, these days, you're not doing work to stay busy, and you're not doing work to tell your team, wow, look at me, I'm so busy, team, I'm so busy. Your team doesn't need you to be busy. Your team needs you to lead, and your team needs to trust that you have cash flow. Period, the end. Your job as a CEO is to lead according to your vision and ensure you have cash flow. So on the days that you're actually focusing, you're getting results. Every day I look and I ask myself, did I get a result? Did I get a result? Because if all I did was busy work, that was not a good day. It was not the best use of my time. So here's our examples of my focus day activities. These are the activities that I believe move the needle in my business. And also, these are also things that at this point in the business, I am the person leading the charge. I hope in the future it is not this, but at this current time, I am the one recording podcast. I am doing the consulting for clients. I am thinking of new tools or models that we could be using. I cannot wait for the day when we have a team of gangbusters who are coming up with so many models and tools, and then we have the cash flow to sustain these ideas. That is the goal. Developing new products, batching educational video content. Right now, that person who's doing that on the team is me. It might not be that way in the future. Recording a course. I am the person who's delivering the course. I am the person who can be the only person to do that. That is what I do on focus days. Category 3 are buffer days. Free days, focus days, and buffer days. Now, a buffer day is for preparation and organization. I am telling you, how you scale and how quickly you scale your business to 8 figures is how prepared and organized. Now, we had a macro session in session 1, and we spoke about the macro level of building up the systems. But what does it actually look like for you? What are your systems as a CEO? Now, your buffer days are going to ensure that you're prepared to perform at your highest on the focus days, and that your team has what they need to execute the vision. Because what happens is what you will soon start realizing is your team is so good at what they do, but they need the tools to be prepared to do it. If you become the bottleneck that your team cannot do what it is they do, then you need to go back and ask yourself, what am I doing and how am I getting stuck in the situation? So I'm going to get to this in a second. I'm going to bring out a couple examples. Here's examples of what I do on buffer day activities. I prepare for a speaking event. I am working with other consultants or coaches. I am meeting with my team, and I'm preparing notes and getting prepared for focus days. Now, I'm going to tell you a real life example of what is going to happen on a buffer day tomorrow. I use Fridays as buffer days. Now, Fridays are a full work day for me, but I do not schedule meetings on Fridays because I don't want to have to think about showing up for anybody else but me. Now, on Fridays, I am a part of Gary Vaynerchuk's VaynerX Mastermind, and we meet on Fridays. What a perfect day. When I had they had asked, what days can you possibly meet? And I'm like, I want to do all of my meetings on Fridays because I've already scheduled. Those buffer days are focused on me. Now, this Friday, this week has been very busy, and I try to batch all of my meetings on Mondays. So Mondays are a day that I sit in this chair and I am in meetings from 9 a.m. to about 4 a.m. Meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. I choose that because all of my focus is on serving others and making sure we're prepared for the week. Fridays are the days that I prepare for the following week. Now, on this Friday, what I started realizing, I had a conversation with our COO, and I said, I am the linchpin to our video content. When I am assessing our short form videos, what I have is a full library and archive of short form videos that I'm not using. And when she asked me, why are you not using these videos? And I said, oh, because of this, 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 and this. And she says, but have you conveyed that properly to the team about how we're constantly iterating on the things that we need for short form video? And I said, I haven't done the best job. So what happens here? I realized I became a linchpin for actually not using content. So what did we do on the buffer day? If I want to get the quickest result, I'm going to set up a meeting with my video team to say, here are some new requirements. Here's how we can constantly get better. Because once they are prepared for the tools that I am looking for, I get out of the process. But what happens between realizing I am the bottleneck and setting up a meeting on a buffer day? I got a task that said, please come up with 3 or 4 examples in preparation of that meeting so that you're prepared. The meeting is not going to be more than 30 minutes. The team has a very good idea of your point of view, and then they have a very good idea of how they get results. So a buffer day. Now, could you just imagine if I didn't have a buffer day and I had all my days fully booked out, and then I said, oh, I need to add a meeting. Oh my God, another meeting. No. Buffer days allow us to step into our vision and then assess what are we doing to get closer or further from that. Now, I have to say, achieving a schedule of free days, focus days, and buffer days is part of your job as CEO, right? It's just part of it. Your job, like I've always maintained, is to steer the vision and watch the cash flow. But part of being able to do those things, you need your focus days, your buffer days, and your free days. But when I started doing this, and this is what they mentioned in the book, you're going to have to let go of a lot. And you're going to have to really look at how you're structuring your schedule. And I know that probably what comes up for you, it definitely came up for me. And I'm like, there's no way that this can change because I'm doing the most already. I'm fully maxed out and this system's working. This system's working. But I'm going to tell you a piece of advice that my early coach told me. What got you here isn't going to get you there. I will tell you right now, what gets you to 6 million is not going to be the thing that gets you to 9 million. It's just not. The structure has to change. So how do we do this? Now we're in the how. So please, as you have questions, leave them in the chat and I'll make sure to get to them at the end. Step 1 is to begin with an audit. Now, here are questions to ask yourself in the audit process. You want to know how to restructure when you think it's impossible. Number 1, what are the tasks or projects that I'm doing that do not fit into my focus days, moving the needle, my buffer days, preparing to move the needle, or free days? What is stopping me? What am I doing that don't fit in there? Number 2, who can I delegate these tasks or projects to? If you do not have anybody in your sphere, then you have to ask yourself, do I need to hire anyone? If so, who do I need to hire? And lastly, what systems do I need to create my transfer of knowledge? Here is a real life example. I went through and I started realizing that I was spending a lot of times managing my Asana tasks. And because I do many things, I am a professional speaker, I am a mastermind host, I am a podcast host, I am CEO of Social Curator, I do consulting. These are all individually what most people would look at as their full-time gigs, and I am doing all of it, not because I'm special or unique. I have airtight processes that empower me to streamline this. However, I started realizing, why am I sitting here trying to organize my Asana task according to my travel schedule, according to dependencies on the team, according to when I need to get it done? And I realized that I was not doing a very good job managing my calendar. I was not doing a good job managing my Asana tasks. And I had never trusted anybody to build a system for me because this was my way of working. And I'm highly creative and I don't want somebody putting me in a box. And I realized that this past week, that needed to change. Well, I realized last month, but this past week, we made an official hire to an executive assistant. An executive assistant is very different than a virtual assistant, a VA. Now, I will tell you that I have waited far too long to get an executive assistant. If you're making 7 figures, your next for sure hire needs to be an executive assistant. Now, I only say that because just last month, I was in Austin for a 9-figure scaling model. They said 8 to 9 figures, we're teaching people how to scale. And when they asked people, who here doesn't have an EA, I raised my hand and a group of people, about a third of us raised our hand. And what Cody Sanchez said is, you are so bleep, bleep, bleep. Like, she had choice words of saying, you are robbing your vision and your team of the time you need. An executive assistant is much cheaper than what you're paying yourself. And it was like, you're right. And so let me save you time, an executive assistant. Now, what projects that I need to allocate? And I made a list of am I going to get let go of? Do I need to hire? The answer became yes. And what systems do I need to create? I sat with her and I told her, I am not the best at getting what's out of my head onto paper. So we're going to work together for 2 months and we have one check-in 30 minutes a week and she's doing everything virtual and she's only going to be working with me for 5 to 10 hours a week. That's what I had said. And that's what I asked. And I thought to myself, if I get 10 hours back in a week, I will have just on paper made tens of thousands of dollars of work that I could be putting somewhere else because my hourly rate is not her hourly rate. Mine is probably 100x what we're paying her. So Step 2 is to set your expectations. What we're going to be doing here is the work that you have identified in your audit, it's going to take time to accomplish. You're going to have to commit your energy and your attention to the process itself. Or, like me, pay somebody to get the process out of your head. But I understand it will not happen overnight. And I'm here to tell you that up until this point, I created my own processes and system for this. And then I realized that life got too busy and we're running too fast. I can't drop the ball. Step number 3 is to structure your free focus and buffer days. Now, this was a massive shift for me, is when I got very serious about structuring these days that I started seeing personal and professional growth. So you want to look at your calendar for the next 6 to 12 months, because here was the thing. I knew taking down days or just blocking off to think was important. I knew that. And so what happened is I would get to the beginning of the month and I'd be like so exhausted. I'd be like, okay, I'm going to find time this month and I'm just going to take a half day. And I would look at my calendar and I realized I didn't have a blank half day. So what I started realizing was, man, if I'm going to stay true to this, I need to start blocking these out at minimum a quarter in advance. So I have to tell you that this is very hard because in September, I am taking a full week off. That was my buffer week. I'm taking a full week. I'm talking about no work, no nothing. And it's as if you dare the universe to throw you a chin chuck. Like, I'm going to see how serious you are about this, because never before have I gotten 3 of the most incredible opportunities to have podcast hosts. They're like, we're going to be in California. We want to be on your podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, they're good. And I noticed it's on my off buffer week. And everything in me is like, well, I could just move the buffer week a little bit back. And I said, no. These buffer days, these buffer weeks are a top priority. So much so that just this morning, hand to heaven, over a cup of coffee with my husband and my co-founder, I said, I need to schedule some buffer time in November, because September, I have a buffer week, but October, I am traveling more than half the month. And because you're always on the go, I'm not getting any downtime. Every time I travel and I meet with other people, I speak on stages, I build these connections, I need time to actually reflect, what does this mean for the business? What does it mean for our focus days? And what does it mean for the vision? So you're going to block off your free days first. Now, you would think I'm going to tell you to block off your focus days. Oh, no. Because the free days are when your mind really gets into overdrive as a CEO of a 7-figure business. So create a list of what you might do on these days and then test what works for you. I will tell you that with a lot of deep work with an executive coach, I realized that I would take my buffer days and I called them all the same. I called them buffer days. But now, since I've been doing it long enough, I've now denoted with my husband and business partner, on my buffer days, I'm going to have a reflection day, or I'm going to have a relaxation day. So in September, my husband and I decided that we're going to take a relaxation trip. And in November, we're going to take a reflection trip. Now, we might flip the order, but either way, we're blocking these out. So what's the difference between a reflection day and a relaxation day? A relaxation day is, my goal is to do nothing. My goal is to fry like a tortilla chip while sipping a margarita. My goal is to listen to the world's dumbest podcast and read the most ridiculous fiction and be able just to sit in a pool and do a spa treatment and build sandcastles with my daughter and just be like, let my hair down. A reflection day, I'm sober. I don't even drink all that much. I like a Friday night margarita. But on my relaxation days, I'm like, whatever I want to do is what I'm going to do. On reflection days, no distractions, a lot of journaling, a highly scheduled time, meditate, yoga, journal, do deep work, go on 3-hour walks. Now, once you've tried a few options, because what works for me might not work for you. You might say, I need to go on a 3-day camping trip. Amazing. You're going to have to test to figure out what you're actually resonating with. Now, your long-term goal, when you have really scaled your business and you are 100% in that leadership visionary role, 180 days of free days, and you're like, wait, what? There's 365 days in a year, and you want me to do 180 of free days? Don't we all? Your free days are empowering you to create synapses, and ideas that don't exist for the people who don't create that space. It doesn't mean that you're not building. It just means that you're building differently than you had before. You're going to block off your focus days after your free days. I've already mentioned my focus days at minimum are Mondays. And those are just focus days are just meetings. And then I have focus days on Thursdays. And on Thursdays, we're focus days of just podcasting. I am a guest on podcast or I am creating podcast. Those are pure focus days. And then I add another focus day there in the week. Friday is my buffer day, and then I schedule my free days. Now, I want you to make a clear list of focus day tasks, and then you're going to share this with your EA so they know how best to schedule your days. Not all tasks of mine are created equal. So I need to tell my EA, these are the most important. And so when you see I have time, please schedule the most important ones. And their job is to keep you on track, but your job is to tell them what are the most important. And so your long-term goal would be 90 to 150 focus days. Just imagine having just as much free days, like your thinking days, as your focus days. Now you're going to block off your buffer days last. Make sure that you have a clear list of buffer day tasks, and you're going to share that with your EA. What are you doing on buffer days? Remember, buffer days are not off days. Buffer days are preparation, organization, and then he or she will help you stay organized according to your priorities. Now, your long-term goal for the buffer days are going to be anywhere between 35 and 90. I feel really proud that the team has really helped me and empowered me to keep my buffer days every Friday. What a luxury. It didn't happen overnight, though. It didn't happen overnight. There was a whole weaning process of understanding what it meant and what I had to let go of. Now, you probably earlier are going to find it easier to create free weeks or focus weeks or buffer weeks instead of days. It just depends where you are in the business. If you're heavily in the business right now and you're not on the business, if you're heavily in your 7-figure business, you're going to be like, you want me to have a focus week? Good luck, kid. However, when you've already established a team and there's a lot of systems in place, finding weeks of time is going to be easier for you. But you're just going to choose right now to choose what makes sense. If right now you're just starting off with days, good. Start there and commit to it. Step 4 is to reevaluate every 3 to 6 months. So I want you and your EA to schedule a regular meeting with yourself. Go to a little coffee shop and look, how have I used my time? Did I need to be going on that trip? Did I need to be booking that podcast interview? Did I need to do that speaking event? These are all of the things I'm asking myself. What am I learning that I need to not do in order for me, 1, to stay true to the vision, and number 2, make sure we have cash flow. So here are some questions to ask yourself. And I know we're getting very granular. Session 1 was very macro. Session 2 is hella micro. But I don't want you coming to this being like, I feel empowered. I feel motivated. I don't care that you're motivated, because motivation is fleeting. Structural change allows you to scale. So here's a few questions. Did that sound mean? I mean, I care about you. I care about, that's not a rude. They're like, rude. Maybe, but it's also just the truth. Okay, so questions to ask. What is the division between your free, focus, and buffer days? Does anything need to shift? If so, what is shifting? Is my EA scheduling my focus and buffer days correctly? If not, what clarity do I need to provide? Very similar to me offering clarity to the video team. Nobody's in your head. They don't know what you like and they don't know what you're thinking. Your job is to convey it, set standards, process results, and say, are we sticking to that plan? And then lastly, are my free days refreshing? If not, what do I need to adjust? Okay, step 5 is to adjust your mindset around work. Now, your free days, what we're calling your recovery days, are going to propel you into the 8 figures. But if you're anything like me, and maybe you're not, maybe you're like, oh, my free days, I just landed right into it. It took me a very long time. It felt wildly uncomfortable. Why? Because I've always been trained to think that working looks one way and working gets me results. So if I wasn't working in that one way, I wouldn't get results. And what I have learned starting distinctly in 2020 was that thinking is just a different way of working. but it is strategic thinking. It is giving yourself the time and the space to get disparate dots and things that might not make sense and say, oh my gosh, same situation, different vantage point. A quote from the book, the more successful you become, the more recovery takes the front seat to everything else. The more successful you become, the more recovery takes the front seat to everything else. Your ability to turn 100% on and work in a flow state is equal proportion to your ability to turn 100% off and fully let go. Focus is a contraction and recovery is an expansion. I'm telling you that when I understood this concept and then I embraced it, that the times I was the most expansive is when I spent alone time with myself and got real on where we were going and what we wanted to achieve as a team. Now, a common question right about this time is, if I fully own my role as a leader and not a manager, will my team be able to run the business? Okay, I get it, but my response is exactly the same. It was listed in the book, but they're just a lot smarter and they have PhDs after their name. So you'll never know how good your team is until you go away. They'll never know how good they can be until you let them manage themselves. Ooh. If that is not the most realist real. When I step away and I see the way this team is problem solving, building their own systems, asking far better questions than I could ever ask, I say, that's the team who's going to get us to the moon. It ain't me. I'm honored to lead that team, but they're really good and they could work anywhere else they choose. And they choose to work here. I must honor their power by getting out of the way. But there will be an adjustment process. This is not Candyland. Balls will be dropped. It is not like, oh, but what happens if? No, let me tell you, let me break it to you. It will happen. Mistakes are going to be made. Balls are going to be dropped. You're going to be wildly disappointed. Sometimes you're going to be calm in a meeting and you're going to get off the meeting and walk away and you're like, oh, yes. And you want to know what? A good team gets better with a good leader. And we say, what happened? What are we not going to do next time? Let's go. That is the entire process, because the truth is that you won't hit 8 figures and beyond unless you do this work and unless they do their work and solve problems that arise along the way. You do your work and they do their work. And as the problems arise, and they will, you'll figure them out. In fact, I had a conversation with my mentor on Monday, and she told me the more successful you become, you earn the right to solve bigger problems. If you are solving bigger problems, congratulations, you're moving in the right direction. Because the bottom line is that CEOs that are stuck in the details, like, why do I feel like I'm still managing my team? Well, your business won't scale if you are a manager. And so your job is to ask yourself, how do I get away from managing and into leadership? And the good news is that CEOs who do the hard work, like we say it's hard, but it's just the good work. It's the CEOs who do the good work of getting out of their business so they can clearly see and innovate. And it's when you can clearly see, and when it's you're clearly innovating, that's what's going to take you to the next level. You can't be running a $7 million business and say more is more. No, because you're going to have to continue to innovate. But how do you get the space to think of the innovation? When you have time to think on your own. I am so excited to have the ability to connect with you next week. We're going to be getting into the third session of this class, or this third class of this series, and it's the marketing strategies you need to increase your visibility. So when we talk about scaling, what did we do? We went through macro level systems. Session 2 was the micro level systems of you, individual as you as the leader. And once we have had those systems of growth, then with marketing, we open up the floodgates. And now that we know the system is ready to handle it, that's when we see massive and successful growth and scaling. All right, so let's go in. Let's start diving right into the questions. I am here in a place of service. Okay, Starting here. How do you know? This is from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. How do you know when to let go of a team member? I have a team of 5 right now, one specific employee who is a great person. Everyone loves her, but she doesn't meet my expectations in terms of the quality of work she produces, and I end up having to do a lot of the work she have done. So I think I saw this on Pinterest. I don't pay people to give me a headache. Sarah, you said, how do you know? Sarah, you know. You already know it's time to let her go. So I am not going to give you the framework for how to know when it's time. If you're doing her work and you're paying her and you're doing her work, you're robbing yourself. You're literally taking money out of your business account and lighting it on fire. And you have less time and you're more stressed. So if then this becomes, how do I actually move in a different direction away from this employee? I worked with a consultant. She's absolutely fantastic. Her name is Teresa Lowe. And she sat down and she said, when it comes to working with employees, you have to identify facts, not feelings. We cannot have a conversation. I'm going to call this person Stephanie. I can't have a conversation with Stephanie. I'm like, Stephanie, I just feel like the quality of your work isn't there. Stephanie doesn't care what I feel. What does that even mean? So first, Sarah, when you're talking to Stephanie, you need to outline, how do you know the quality of the work is good? And if you say, well, it's just what I know. Okay, problem. We have to, as leaders, identify the quality and the standards of what our expectations are. This is how we define what good work is. Once you have identified this is what good work is, you're going to have a meeting with Stephanie and say, Stephanie, it's come to my knowing and my understanding that the quality of your work can be improved. But I really want to support you through this process. This is the new standards of qualities. And basically, what you've outlined for her work is clearly laid out. And then you're also going to include a result, right? So the result is I get a perfectly done PDF every week. Maybe that's the result. And so you say, Stephanie, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building in a performance plan. You tell her at the outset. This is, otherwise it's the acronym is a PIP, a performance improvement plan. Stephanie, I'm going to start us on a performance improvement plan. And so I'm going to be here for whatever it is you need, but I need to make sure that number 1, our standards are met. Number 2, we're getting the consistent result that we want. And then I'm going to be continuously checking in to make sure that we're actually on the same page. Is there anything you need from me or anything you don't understand right now about this? And if she says, nope, I got it. And then the next week, you notice that, it looks like the item number 3, well, she missed. So what are you going to do? You're going to document it. You're going to document it in Slack or whatever you communicate with her. And then you're going to have to build out a file, a performance. You can Google performance improvement plan on just getting a document on how to do this. Now, we would convey this with Rosie is our HR specialist. We would tell Rosie, I would, as CEO or a COO would say, hey, we have Stephanie on a PIP and here's what we outlined. And that way, HR and the reporting manager are going to be the people who are focused on that. We have a clear itemized documentation because you need to document every time somebody has gone off of the performance plan, because in case you do actually have to fire Stephanie, you have clear documentation of facts, not feelings. This will help you in any sort of employee dispute thereafter. So in summary, you have to first identify your standards of quality of work and make sure that they're clearly identified. Number 2, you will then convey to Stephanie that she is on a performance improvement plan. You will then ask if she has any questions or any reason why she might not be able to adhere to the performance plan. If she co-signs, then it's on you to make sure, is she adhering to the standards? If not, you stop it right when you see it and say, I'm going to add this to our file. And what we do, a PIP lasts anywhere to 30, 60, 90 days. I will tell you that anybody that we have worked with that we have told that we're on a PIP, they didn't make it to the 90 days because we already knew. But we have to follow a protocol and we have to assume the best. Cool. That was a long answer, but I'm hoping that it's helpful. Okay. Karina, how would you lead a very creative How would you lead as a very creative leader and a very creative team? It sometimes gets messy with the organization and planning for all and for me. You hire somebody who is operations based. As a creative leader and working with a lot of creatives, I'm very happy to say that our COO is hands down the most logical person and the most systems driven and the most organized person I have ever met. She has systems for her systems. And she is the complete yin to my yang. And she is always challenging myself and everybody on the team. Where's the breakdown? We're going to systematize it. Like everybody knows. Jade will go back like a detective. What happened here? What do we need to fix it? And it's great. We all need that person in our life. In fact, we have become such a systems-driven team. Last Monday, we had a team meeting, and we talk about like a personal win or a professional win. And our one of our wins from our team members said, "I'm so excited because I started using Asana for my personal tasks, and now I get to schedule all the points that I need to talk with my husband all in one task. So when it's time for us to talk, I'm fully organized." I was like, okay, one, you're on the right team. When you are creating yourself, like she has her own personal life Asana board. I mean, clap that up. So, Karina, remember remember in our last session, we spoke about creating an org chart. If what you're saying is you're a creative leader and you have a creative team and you need somebody to build those operations, then in your org chart, you need to put somebody higher up in the organization as somebody who runs the systems, runs the processes. Alice, is there a way to work directly with you? Right now, I want you to sign up for the mastermind. We're not pitching it. There is a wait list. JasmineStar.com/mastermind waitlist. It is going to be a very small group of 7-figure business owners. And what I have noticed is when I took the biggest leaps in my career, I was working with a small group of people. And I want to work with 7-figure business owners. That's my threshold. I am working with 7-figure business owners. I do consulting. I'm not taking on new clients right now. I'm fully focused on building out our mastermind program for 7-figure entrepreneurs. I'm very excited about what's in store. You want to know what? The person I just spoke about, Teresa, who taught us all of like the systems of working with and building out a strong team, she's going to become and be a guest at the mastermind. We're talking about 7-figure opportunities. That's what I'm going to say. Some people call them problems. I've been coached to call them opportunities. So what happens is we've earned the right to solve bigger problems, but that means we're needing to get advice from people who are very seasoned in what it is they do. And we're going to be building systems around that. And it's better not to do it alone. I'll tell you that much. Amanda, I am watching this as a 30-year leader in healthcare that has transitioned into a business owner and a real estate career. Congratulations. I'm not yet an 8-figure earner. What is the most important step I should focus on now to get me to the 8-figure business status? Your team. Your team will be the people to guide you to the 8-figure status. I had a conversation with Gary Vaynerchuk yesterday. I know. I just slipped in that little subtle, oh yeah, me and Gare Bear, we just talked. No. I have invested in his Leadership Accelerator program. It's like a mastermind. I am in it with 9 other people. 5 of us are business owners, CEOs, and the other 5 people are CMOs, chief marketing officers for Fortune 500 companies. So Vayner created a dynamic between people who don't normally think or run in similar circles to put us all into a petri dish so we can see things from different perspectives and grow in massive ways. This is why I'm so passionate about the mastermind I'm hosting, because I've had these massive quantum jumps. Yesterday, as part of the program, we get opportunities to talk with Gary. I had a conversation with him yesterday. And the conversation that I asked him, I said, as I'm scaling, I have these big visions and ideas, but I am not a big player in the field. When you started VaynerX and you started your companies and you were the new kid on the block and nobody saw you in that way, but you knew who you were, how were you able to court and cultivate the top talent from other agencies to join your agency? And I said, I need to court and find the top talent to take us to the next level, but I am not a big player in the field. And he said, you get over it. He's like, if they catch your vision, they're going to be the people who take it farther than you can imagine. If they don't catch your vision, that's fine. One day they'll look at you and say, damn, I missed that opportunity. That's not a deep or profound thought, but it felt like, you're right. You will either pick up what I just put down, or you won't. You will either look across the table from me and be like, you know what? This girl has a lot to learn, and maybe she is the smallest on the block, and maybe, just maybe, she has the thing that's going to get to where we're going to go. I want to sit on her rocket ship. And there's going to be people who will be like, this girl ain't got a bad chance in hell. And to them, we say, well, time will tell. And so as you are scaling to 8 figures, you have to ask yourself, are these people going to pick up what I'm putting down? Do they get the culture? Do they see where we're going? Do they want to be part of the build in the ascension? And if not a big deal. Wish you all the best. And so as you are scaling and doing these incredible things, congratulations, it's find the right people who catch your vision and want to build alongside of you. I look forward to seeing all of y'all in session number 3. What an honor and a privilege. And I hope you guys have a beautiful day. Take care.